Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Threads by Agari Krishna Prabhu. Here's a little song by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jannava Jaya Girivarada Jaya Girivaradari Gopi Jannava Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya 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 Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Jaya Madhava Jaya Kunja Gopi Gandhava Girivaradari Girivaradari Gopi Jannavala Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yasodeva Jayam Raja Janaran Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramhamsa Vivajakacharya Stoutar Satya Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramhamsa Vivajakacharya Astoutar Satya Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from the King of Books, the Srimad Bhagavatam, in its 5th canto, or skanda. Which text? Chapter 3, text number 11. Rishabdev's appearance in the womb of Meru Devi, the wife of King Nabi. It's a wonderful chapter wherein Krishna, the Lord, who appears? I guess Narayan, in his Narayan form, appears and says, well, you want a son like me? There ain't nobody like me. It's funny because we all have that like attitude, you know, there's nobody like me. There's a lot of people kind of like us, you know, with lots of similar qualities. But the reason we talk like that is because Krishna said it first. There's nobody like me. And we're all part and parcel of the Lord. Anyway, jokes aside, text number 11. Yes. Asanganishita Gyana Nanal Vidudha Shesha Malanam Bhavatsvabhavanam Atmaramanam Muninam Anavaratta Parigunita Gunagana Paramamangalayana Gunagana Katano Si. Word for word translation says Asanga, by detachment, Nishita, strengthened, Gyana, of knowledge, Anala, by the fire, Anala, Dushprena Analena Cha. Burns like fire, never satisfied. Viduta, removed. Ashesha, unlimited. Malanam, whose dirty things. Mala, I think with the long A on the end. It's like mud or contamination. Of course, mala, garland, but mala, mud. Bhavat svabhavanam, who have attained your qualities. Atma aramanam, those who are self-satisfied. Atmarama. Muninam, of great sages. Anavarata, incessantly. Parigunita, recounted. Gunagana, O Lord, whose spiritual qualities, Paramamangala, supreme bliss, Ayana, produces. Gunagana katanaha, he, the chanting of whose attributes, Asi, you are. all sorts of sweet words in this verse. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. Dear Lord, all the great sages, these are the priests of Maharaj Nabi speaking. They say, Dear Lord, all the great sages who are thoughtful and saintly persons incessantly recount your spiritual qualities. These sages have already burned up all the unlimited dirty things, and by the fire of knowledge, strengthened their detachment from the material world. Thus, they have attained your qualities and are self-satisfied. They have attained your qualities and are self-satisfied. Yet even for those who feel spiritual bliss in chanting your attributes, your personal presence is very rare. Purport. The priests in Maharaj Nabi's sacrificial arena appreciated the personal presence of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and they considered themselves very much obliged. The Lord's appearance is rare even for great saintly persons who have become completely detached from this material world and whose hearts are clean due to constantly chanting the glories of the Lord. Such people are satisfied by chanting the transcendental qualities of the Lord. The Lord's presence is not actually required. Prabhupada said here in this purport, the Lord's personal presence is not actually required. The priests are pointing out that the Lord's personal presence is very rare, even for such elevated sages, but that he was so kind to them that now he was personally present. Therefore, the priests were very much obliged. Wow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Vayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Kopesha Kopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, wow, this verse, amazing and relevant. It's encouraging. Again, these priests, they're saying, Dear Lord, all the great sages who are thoughtful and saintly persons incessantly recount your spiritual qualities. That's what they're recounting. Remember that old presidential election, George Bush and Al Gore, and then there was the recount and the recount of the recount. The first, perhaps that was the beginning of the end of American presidential integrity, election integrity. But instead of incessantly recounting who gets to be king of the heap, king of the pile, the great sages and thoughtful saintly persons, they're incessantly recounting the spiritual qualities of the Lord. which is just so wonderful. How many qualities are there? Of course, in our Nectar of Devotion, we read about 64 prominent qualities. The Lord's qualities are unlimited, but there's so many nice qualities we can read about in the Nectar of Devotion. And that's what we should be incessantly recounting again and again and again. They say these sages have already burned up all the unlimited dirty things, and by the fire of knowledge, strengthened their detachment from the material world. So this is especially important for us as aspiring devotees of Lord Krishna. We need to burn up the unlimited dirty things within our heart with fire of knowledge, strengthen detachment from the material world. I mean, that's why we're here. We're reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We're cultivating some knowledge of the transcendental name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord. And that knowledge burns up all the crap, all the gunk in the heart. It's not the high cholesterol in the heart that's the problem. It's our kama, our selfish desire, and the concomitant reactions to that selfish desire. And knowledge can burn that up, actually. Krishna says that, right? In the Bhagavad Gita. Yathai damksi samidognir pasmasat kurute arjuna gyanagni sarva karmani pasmasat kurute tata. That this transcendental knowledge, particularly the knowledge of the nature of the Lord, his guna, his qualities, it's like fire. It burns up all the reactions to our karmic activities. And that's how we're detached from the material world. Some things that just got to be burned down. Like if you have some old shed somewhere, it's become infested. The wood is rotten. It's like, what can you do with it? Burn it down. So we have this attachment to the material world. It's rotten to the core. So we burn it down. The fire of knowledge, everything becomes purified in fire. Metals can be separated from their contaminants. That which was otherwise useless, wood, can still produce valuable heat and light. Purified, utilized. So we need to cultivate that transcendental knowledge. Take some effort, but we're seeing the result of that is described in this verse here. All the unlimited dirty things can be burned up by the fire of knowledge. So how valuable is that knowledge? Krishna says himself, I mean, he's talking about knowledge of himself, and to encourage us in cultivating that knowledge, he actually says, what does he say? He says that there's nothing so sublime and pure. What is that verse? I want to read the Sanskrit because it's really interesting. Nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Oh, nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate tat svayam yoga samsida kalinatmani vindati. It's like in this back half of the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is trying to encourage us. Keep reading, keep studying, cultivate this transcendental knowledge, because in this world, there's nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. This knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. And one has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service, enjoys this knowledge within him, within himself in due course of time. So the Lord's encouraging us himself, saying, you must gain this knowledge. And what is this knowledge? Knowledge of the self, the supreme self, and the relationship. Such a person is really a muni, a great thinker. If they've contemplated, they've heard, and they've understood knowledge of the self, the supreme self, and the relationship between them. That's the knowledge which is really valuable, which transforms us, which burns up the unlimited dirty things in the heart. Like raise your hand if you've got unlimited dirty things in your heart, right? Hello. And so we really need that. We really need that. And, nowadays, a lot of people are trying different things to deal with their anartas, their unwanted, unlimited, dirty things in the heart. And some of it might have some value. Don't get me wrong, but there's nothing more valuable, more effective, more transformational and purifying than knowledge of the Supreme Person, Krishna, knowledge of the real self, the non-material self, and knowledge of that relationship between them. Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. That's the knowledge that we need. I say that because there are a lot of, self-help gurus. It's a big industry nowadays. Lots of self-help gurus out there. We got this one guy who comes along to the center, is really struggling on so many different levels. And I had to tell him the other day, a large part of your struggling is because you just listen to so many different self-help gurus, and they're all talking about this type of emotional intelligence and this sort of social perspective. And you got to get inside yourself and write these journals about all these different feelings that you have all the time. And he's just so absorbed in it that he's totally dysfunctional in everything else that he does. Can't go to class, can't go to work, just constantly absorbed in his own thought processes about how he's supposed to be really sensitive to every single feeling and write down every feeling, just struggling so much with it. And it's just over the top. It's over the top to the point of being useless. Because if you can't function, what is the use of all of this deep introspective contemplation of every different psychological flurry that happens within your mind? If you can't function, if you can't do something practically, then what is the use of all of this stuff? And honestly speaking, so many of these self-help gurus, they depend on people being 100% engaged in contemplating whatever it is they're offering. That's how they get their livelihood. So healing isn't really conducive to their business model. These people, they sell healing, by deep contemplation and analysis of every thought that you have. But becoming better isn't really good for their business model. And so there's always more. You got to read my next book, and you got to do more of this journaling, and you got to get into these different Sangha groups where you talk about every single thought that you've had. And it becomes totally dysfunctional. And you can see that people are trying to deal with the stuff in their heart, There's a lot of dysfunction in the world. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of broken people, struggling people, and they're looking for a solution. But I think that their investment into all of these self-help gurus who have no knowledge of or interest in the Supreme Person, the non-material self, and the relationship between them, then those people are just misleading, just blind leading the blind. And it's really quite sad, actually. So I'm not into that. I'm into what's described here, that the transcendental knowledge of Krishna, it really does solve our problems. The unlimited dirty things in the heart. We've got so much there, so much anartha, lust, anger, envy, greed, madness, and illusion. And they become dissolved by the fire of transcendental knowledge. That's what Krishna is saying in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Gyanagni sarva karmani basmasat kurute arjuna. It just basmasat kurute tata. It burns up all of that stuff. And we got to have some faith in that. And we have faith by seeing the example of devotees who have done it. The munis, the sadhus. That's the whole point of this Atmarama verse, the famous Atmarama verse. We see their example, and that should give us some encouragement. If we look at the example of people who go head over heels, diving headlong into the whole self-help, materialistic self-help industry, we don't see positive example there. I got to be honest. In fact, even a lot of devotees get caught up in this. if I can be a bit judgmental for a moment, not like anybody here in this group, but I've got some friends and friends of friends over in Europe and Asia, and they got, they go through some difficulty. One went through a divorce, and then she just got like so deep into all these different self-help gurus, not Krishna conscious gurus, but instead like, oh, this teacher is saying that when I have this feeling, I need to stop and contemplate why this feeling is arising, and I need to communicate that particular feeling in this way to another person. And it sounds nice, but because it doesn't really solve the problem, practically devotees just get sucked into doing it all the time to the point where they're not doing devotional service, which is actually going to purify the heart. So cheaters and charlatans, in my opinion, a lot of these self-help gurus. We need to have confidence that the transcendental knowledge of Krishna, as described in Bhagavad Gita, is actually sufficient to burn up all the unlimited dirty things in the heart. And there are plenty of good examples of that, and that's where we get that faith. There are plenty of good examples, and we contemplate those examples. Contemplation of those examples are the evidence that the process works. It's the evidence that Krishna consciousness is effective in purifying and remembering our non-material spiritual identity. And those persons are evidence of the transcendental quality and nature of the Lord. And that's what's described here in this verse. These sages have already burned up. We're talking about those great sages, those thoughtful, saintly persons who incessantly recount your spiritual qualities. That's actually what I'm talking about here. Not the self-help industry, but the real, thoughtful, and saintly persons who incessantly recount the spiritual qualities of the Lord. They attain the same quality as the Lord. They're self-satisfied. And that's an important, tangible evidence for us. And we should contemplate those persons. Atmaramas chamonayo nigranta pyurukrame kurvantikim bhaktim itam bhuta guno hari. Such an important verse in the second chapter of the first canto, text number 7 or 10, is it? No, third chapter of the first canto, text number 10. I think Atmarama, the Atmarama verse, is very important. Because these persons who are Atmarama, who are self-satisfied, who are Muni, great thinkers, incessantly recounting the spiritual qualities of the Lord, Nigranta apyarukrame, Atmaramaschamonayano, Nigranta apyarukrame, kurvantya ahoitikim bhaktim, who are so absorbed, even though being fully detached from material energy, just like fully detached from anything that's attractive in this material world because of being self-satisfied, still they are attracted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And this is the evidence that the Lord's qualities are transcendental. They are not material. Itam bhuta guno hari. That persons who have renounced everything in this material world, they're not attracted to the male and female relationship dynamic. They're not attracted to attaining position and power, money and fame. They demonstrate that by their activities. They don't endeavor for those things at all. And yet they are attracted to what's going on down by the bank of the Jamuna on the full moon night of the Sharat season. Radha and Krishna's loving affairs. And that's the evidence that Krishna's qualities, Krishna's Leela, it's not material. Because persons who have given up all interest in material things, they are attracted to Krishna. Itam bhuta gunohari. This is really important. That these Atmaramas, these Munis, these great sages, our gurus, and other wonderful devotees whom we are fortunate to associate with, they demonstrate by their quality, by their activity, that detachment from the material world, the burning up of unlimited dirty things, and attachment to the incessant recounting of the spiritual qualities of the Lord is entirely possible. It's not theoretical. It's not just beautiful poetry in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is entirely possible and tangible. Now, the Lord's personal association is not very tangible. It's not always possible, as Prabhupada's saying in this purport here. In fact, it's not even required. It's so rare. But that's not the evidence that we need. Usually evidence in this material world is we want a person to be front and center in front of us, you know? Even if we know, you know, with all of our sensual experience that they exist, still it's like, you need to be in front of me right here, right now, conforming to all of my expectation. Then I know you're really on my side. You're really my guy. We demand so much from a person as evidence of their love, their affection for us. You know, we demand so much proof, especially if we suffer from insecurity, that even if they are in our personal presence, acting on our behalf or for our benefit, still we're like so doubtful. Do you really love me? Do you really care? I need you to prove it all the time. We demand so much. And we carry that same insecurity to our relationship with Krishna. We want him to be standing in front of us saying, Yasodeva Das, I promise I'm here. I love you. Just chill. But the Lord's presence, personal presence, is so rarely attained, and rightfully so. Rightfully so, because really, unless we have pure devotion, we will misunderstand or fail to appreciate the Lord's personal presence. I mean, that was the Lord's own experience in his Leela in this world, his recent pastimes in this world. That even though associated with Duryodhana and his cousin brother and his brothers, and even though being physically present in front of so many persons at that time, most of them they couldn't appreciate. Some of them, they were inimical. That was very inauspicious for them. They had to be purified the hard way. So even having the personal presence of the Lord does not guarantee an understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, an understanding of devotion. So it's rare. It's rare to have the personal presence. But so therefore, it is even more special for us to have the association of the Atmaramas and the Munis, those who are being described in this verse and in the Atmarama verse, who are thoughtful, saintly persons, fully self-satisfied, fully detached from anything material, but who demonstrate by their action, by their words, by the activities of their heart, that attachment to the Lord is not like attachment to anything material in this world. Itam Bhutano Hari, that the Lord's qualities are fully transcendental, spiritual, and they should be incessantly recounted, remembered, contemplated, heard about, and especially chanted for the benefit of others. That's the tangible evidence that we should long for, that we should look for, that we should get if we can. Get it while you can. Get it while the getting's good. Nice work if you can get it. And if you get it, won't you tell me how? That's what we should be trying to get. Having the personal presence of the Lord is very rare. It's very rare. And Prabhupada's saying it's not even required. But we are instructed to get the association of devotees like who are described in this verse. In fact, I think even in this chapter, these sages are going to say something to that effect. Hold on. Yeah, in text number 14, they're also, these sages, they're also going, the priests of Maharaj Nabi, they're also going to encourage us by saying that unless one worships the lotus feet of great devotees, one will be conquered by the illusory energy. We must aspire for the association of the types of devotees who are described in this verse. The personal presence of the Lord is very rare indeed, but the tangible evidence of the transcendental nature of Krishna is in those persons who are Atma, self-satisfied, who are great sages, always incessantly recounting the spiritual qualities of the Lord, but who, despite having given up all attachment to material existence, they are fully attached to Radha and Krishna's transcendental loving pastimes. That's the evidence that we should long for, aspire for, get it. So I think I've made my point. Hopefully it's convincing that we should have the association of great devotees like that. Let's not take for granted that we get the association of our spiritual master who demonstrates incessant recounting of the spiritual qualities of the Lord, who demonstrates detachment from the material world, who have no dirty things in the heart. If we have their association, we are very, very, very fortunate. Should take advantage of that association. The Lord's personal presence is not actually required. Hearing that sentence from Srila Prabhupada reminds me of a verse in the first canto, which I wonder if I can find it. Maybe one of you shloka sleuths can find, where it says that actually it's by sound. It's by sound that one is meant to associate with the Lord. It's a really interesting way that they put it. Hold on. I'm going to do that obnoxious thing where I make you all wait while I try to find this verse. Oh, it's going to come back to me in just a second. Hold on now. I'm not going to be able to find it. He says that where the sages in Naimisharanya, they say that he is the real worshiper who worships in the form of transcendental sound, that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has no material form. Where is that great, great verse? I won't be able to find it. Anyways, a great purport there also, wherein Srila Prabhupada says that actually a relationship is maintained through sound. It's not, he says that physical presence isn't really necessary, but the real relationship is maintained through sound. And he says that anyone can have any relationship, even long distance, as long as there is sound, like when you call someone or when you're writing. Of course, written word is a visual form of the sound. And then that way a relationship is really there. Oh, Tarika Prabhu found it. Thank you, Prabhu. 5th chapter. Narada Muni said it, of course. First canto, chapter 5, text number 38. Iti murti abhidhanena. See, we're talking about the murti, the form, the personal presence, the form of the Lord. Iti murti abhidhanena, mantra murtim amurtikam. So the Lord is amurtikam. Not formless, of course. He has a transcendental form. There's no material form, amurtikam, and his personal presence is very, very rare. But mantra murtim, he has a form in the mantra. Yajate yagya purusham sasamyag darshana puma. Samyag, this is the perfect form of worship, the perfect darshan. Sasamyag darshana puman. What an incredible verse. Thank you, Tarika Prabhu, for finding it. Thus, this is Narada Muni speaking, he is the actual seer who worships in the form of transcendental sound representation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, who has no material form. So the personal presence is very rare, but we worship that Amurtikam Lord, who has no material form, in his mantra murti, the form of the mantra. That's the real relationship. I'm not going to read the whole purport, but Prabhupada does say, anything which is beyond the scope of our experience, of our imperfect senses, can be realized fully by the sound representation. A person transmitting sound from a far distant place can be factually experienced. If this is materially possible, why not spiritually? Like a relationship really exists, even distanced, if there is transmission of sound. And Prabhupada says, so this is materially possible. Why is it not spiritually possible? Obviously, rhetorical question. It is entirely spiritually possible. This experience is not a vague, impersonal experience. It is actually an experience of the transcendental personality of Godhead who possesses the pure form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Wow. So the Lord is amurtikam. His form is very rarely attained. Very, very rare, even for such elevated sages. But the perfect darshan, samyak darshanaha puman, the perfect darshan of that person is actually the mantra murti. And concomitantly, even if you're in the personal association of a person, even if you're in their physical presence, but there is not exchange of sound, is there really relationship? I think all the married couples can testify to that experience where you're giving each other the cold shoulder for something you don't want to talk, even though you might be in the same room. But the relationship is not there if there is not communication. So let's not be so vain and cheap as to demand that the Lord's personal presence is the necessary part of the relationship. Actually, the necessary part is the transcendental sound, mantra murtim. The Lord's personal presence is not actually required. That's what Prabhupada says. That does not mean that, all right, well then, I guess it's not a big deal. Don't have to be very Krishna conscious. What does it matter? It's not required. No, the presence in the form of sound is absolutely necessary. Incessant recounting of the Lord's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. That's how we associate with the Lord. And we should do so all the time. Some of you might have heard that verse, which says, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatyanyata. Wait, no, that's not the one. Kirtaniya Sada Hari. Both of those verses. All the time. Kirtaniya Sada Hari. I once asked my spiritual master, when I was just a new Bhakta butthead, I said, is this like Kirtaniya Sada Hari, always chanting? Is this like allegorical? You know, because I heard some people say, well, Prabhupada did say something to the effect that if you're writing for Krishna, that's also chanting, or if you're doing some service for Krishna, that's also chanting. And Gurudev said, no, Kirtaniya Sada Hari means always chanting the names of Krishna. And then he said, what's the problem? What's the problem? What's stopping you? You think someone's going to be upset that you're always chanting? He said, just always chant. Kirtaniya Sada Hari. So even though Prabhupada is saying here, the Lord's personal presence is not actually required, that doesn't mean, well, then I guess I just don't have to be interested in Krishna. I don't have to associate with Krishna. Since his personal presence is not required, maybe my devotion is not required. No. The mantra murtim is always required. We need it. We need the Lord's association all the time. And the samyak darshana puman, the perfect darshan, the perfect vision of that person is in the form of transcendental sound. That's the personal presence that we're interested in. If the Lord should be so kind as to reveal himself visually, all the better. But he's already manifested himself in his mantra murtim. We should be so grateful to associate with the Lord in this way. And if you're feeling grateful, if you're loving it, then share it with somebody else. And share it with somebody else. That's our sankirtana. When the cup spilleth over, the heart is filled with so much love for the Lord that you just got to tell somebody about it. Just got to let somebody know that chanting Hare Krishna is the way to go. And then the Lord is very pleased. All right, so I think I've said something sufficient about this verse. Let us contemplate those great sages and thoughtful persons who incessantly recount the spiritual qualities of the Lord. They demonstrate by their detachment from material existence and by their pure hearts. And they demonstrate by their attachment to Krishna that the Lord is itam bhutta gunohari, has transcendental qualities. What is it said here in this verse? Gunagana paramamangala ayana gunagana katanaha. That the Lord's qualities are transcendental. That's the significant, tangible evidence for us. Proof. The Lord's spiritual, non-material existence. And proof of our right to be similarly self-satisfied in Krishna consciousness. So those persons who demonstrate that are so valuable, so wonderful. It's marvelous. Hare Krishna. Any comments or retorts or challenges? I think I've made my point sufficiently. Of course, I could just throw out a whole bunch of other shlokas to back it up. But I think I've made my point. About the Atmaramas and the Munis. I'll throw out one more shloka there. One more shloka about Atmarama, self-satisfied, and Munis, sages. Because Queen Kunti says something to that effect. And something that's relevant to all of us. Because we are all Prakriti. We are all feminine energy meant to give pleasure to the Lord. She says, Tata Paramahamsanam Muninam Amalatmanam Bhakti Yoga Vidanartam. She says, you manifest to give Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, connection and devotion to those who are Paramahamsa, who are Atmarama, and who are Muni. Muninam Atmalatmanam. Atma Amala. They don't have any flaw. Tata Paramahamsanam Muninam Atmalatmanam Bhakti Yoga Vidhanartam. You give devotional service to them, right? Like they're so highly qualified, these Paramahamsas, these self-satisfied Munis. They're detached from material existence. They have no impure things in the heart. To those persons, you give Bhakti Yoga. Krishna himself says, that's the requirement, right? That's the requirement. Brahmabhuta prasanatma nashochati nakangshati samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktin labate. He has such a high requirement. So Queen Kunti, she was praying, she's like directly in the Lord's personal presence saying, these are the people you give Bhakti Yoga to. Katam pashyema hi striya. So how can a woman like me understand you? She's thinking, of course, she's so dear to the Lord that the Lord actually came to see her. But she's thinking, I'm not Paramahamsa, a Muni. I'm not a great thinker, renunciate, detached from the material world. I'm not a self-satisfied yogi. That's what she's thinking. She's thinking, Histriya, I'm just a woman. How can I know you? So we should be feeling similarly because we are all Prakriti. We're actually all feminine, feminine energy. And the Lord is the Purusha. There's only one Purusha in Braj. We should be thinking, Katam Pashyami Histriya. How can I understand you? How can I understand you if I'm not a great Muni, a great thinker, Paramahamsa, I'm not self-satisfied, struggling with attachment and dirty things in the heart. But Prabhupada makes very clear in the purport to Queen Kunti's beautiful prayer that actually it's the sincerity of purpose that the Lord recognizes and reciprocates with. And that one who is sincere in their devotion, then they attain Krishna. It's not required that one be a great thinker and, some super scholar, some Paramahamsa, it's like floating through the ether. One is sincere, then the Lord reciprocates. Simple sincerity, he says, is far more effective in attaining the Lord's favor than showy, insincere religious fervor. These are Prabhupada's words. So don't shoot the messenger. But there's a lot of showy, insincere religious fervor in the world. but Srila Prabhupada makes clear that the sincerity is actually more pleasing to the Lord. So Katyam Pashyami Histriya, we should also be feeling like Queen Kunti. How can I understand you, Lord? I'm not like these Paramahamsas, these great sages. How can I possibly understand you? If we're sincere in that feeling of devotion, then the Lord reciprocates so much. And then Samyak Darshana, we can have perfect darshan of the Lord by chanting his holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah, I think I've exhausted my my time limit here. Any comments or questions or challenges or retorts? You are allowed to disagree with me because I am nobody's guru, which is sweet. No, everyone's fully convinced. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in on this glorious Ekadashi day, the mother of devotion, apparently. Although I'm a little partial to Dwadasi myself, but thanks for tuning in on the Ekadashi day to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Grantaraj.
Hey. We still have several minutes to fill here.
Hare Krishna. Okay, yes, Prabhu. Oh, I heard Jagannath Pandit Prabhu is also...
Yeah, if JP's got something, he can go ahead.
No, I just wanted to appreciate that quote from Srila Prabhupada at was it 1538 about the accessibility of transcendental sound. A person transmitting sound from a far distant place can actually experience. If this is materially possible, why not spiritually? And it made me think about something I heard from this devotee. You may know him. His name is Pani Bhushan. And he was making a comment in a class one time that he was speaking about the super soul and how, and also about the power of prayers. And he was saying that we can want to help someone or to reach out to someone, to pray for someone. And he was saying, if you think of it in this way, that when you're praying for someone, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that super soul is in everyone's heart, and he's their best friend. So, and he was saying that if you approach somebody and say, you know, your best friend needs your help, you know, and you're the best friend of this person, can you help them out? And he was making the point that Krishna is everyone's best friend. And of course, if you appeal to someone's best friend, that their friend is really in need, then why wouldn't that best friend respond to the call? What to speak of the supreme best friend. It's a little different about the transcendental sound, but the potency of that connection with Krishna, you know, how accessible it is and real it is, because that connection is there. Thanks.
Thank you. Talking to Pandit Prabhu, you're always setting such a good example of heartfelt prayer for others. I hear you and Chintamani Mataji talking about it a lot. Should do that. You got to pray for all these kids coming along to the Bhakti Yoga Center because, wow, they just suffer like anything. My God. You know, definitely we should be praying for them. Sometimes maybe we take for granted just how quickly Krishna solves so many of our problems. You know, we have problems. Yeah, we're devotees. We have problems. Like, okay, there's always like money stuff, but we don't suffer the hopelessness and purposelessness that people suffer without Krishna consciousness. That pain that they feel, that confusion, but who I am and what am I doing? It drives some of them to suicide, as you know. Jagannath Pandit Prabhu recently lost someone who's coming along to the center. So we should be praying for them because they suffer so much. So thank you for that nice reminder. Hare Krishna. All right, we can see the doors. That means we can start feeling the ecstasy of anticipation. Gurudev said, you should feel the ecstasy of anticipation in Krishna consciousness. Soon I will see Krishna. Soon I will see Sri Sri Radha Damodar. The door is almost open. It's one of the most important feelings, actually, anticipation.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Haribo.
There's no time to launch into any further discussion, but I express my appreciation for your class. A bunch of nice points, well presented, well supported. It was nice.
I tried to read more directly from Srila Prabhupada because that was your preference.
It's good. Can't go wrong with Srila Prabhupada.
Can't go wrong. That's right.
So, and I like the point about the self-help gurus. I too lament. I've seen so many devotees wasting their life's precious time trying to negate some misery in their life with help from individuals who really are real substantial help. And and it's, it strikes me as peculiar because we already have the best of all possible solutions is in our hands, and yet we sometimes look elsewhere. I think it's important for us to appreciate what we have. That Krishna consciousness actually will solve every problem. Some people will say, "Well, but it takes so long. What do I do in the meantime?" I don't know. I don't buy that argument. I feel that some other route and more lasting benefit by simply chanting Hare Krishna. Anyway, we are out of time, but I thank you. It's a good class.
Thank you, Taraka Prabhu, for your constant encouragement and optimism. Hare Krishna. All right, thank you, dear devotees.
One day when you have a little more time, I'm always anxious to hear about your successes in State College with these, unfortunate souls becoming fortunate because they come in contact with you. As I've told you before, you are the spearhead of our operation on the front lines in the actually doing the preaching. And so for those of us who can't be on the front lines necessarily, it's enlivening to hear So when you get a chance, share some of the nectar. The nectar.
It's not always nectar, Prabhu, unfortunately. Despite my best attempts, still they're killing themselves. Literally.
Well,
So Hare Krishna, we're trying our best. But yeah, one person recently took her own life, and her mother, who I never met, called me. I was one of the first people she called, actually, because she said, you know what? In the last part of her life, she told me, the daughter told her mother that like the only thing that was bringing her happiness was what she was doing at the Bhakti Yoga Center. But I guess it just wasn't quite enough. She was still struggling so much. Hare Krishna. All right. Grantaraj Srim. I'm sorry to end on that. It's really bad out there. It's really bad. And I think sometimes as devotees, we can kind of forget, you know, we stay in our own communities and we most of our problems are solved. You know, there's plenty of prasadam around. Yeah, a couple little conflicts between Prabhus here and there, but it's really nice. And you know, we can easily forget how much people are suffering to the point of killing themselves, totally withdrawing. I got another guy who I feel like is on suicide watch right now, honestly. Just like the symptoms, all the symptoms are there. And I'm reaching out and I'm trying my best, but these people that just, we can't even remember what suffering some of them are going through. I think we just can't even remember. It's hard out there, Prabhu. It's hard. It's really tragic.
You know, Srila Prabhupada had an incredible sense of urgency about the matter of propagating Krishna consciousness. He was acutely aware of the suffering of all the fallen conditioned souls. There was a desperation and urgency about him. Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sorry to end on kind of a depressing note, but that's the reality of our existence.
No, it's an important meditation. We have to think about these things, and it provides incentive for us to work hard for spreading Krishna consciousness. We have the solution. We have the answer for people, and we need to get it to them before it's too late. Very important.
Yeah.
Thank you for the reminder. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar. They are here, so let's focus on them now. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Haribol.
Nanda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Jyoti. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Start. Honestly, the last Christian master, the only way we should attain through devotional service. I bow down to the Lord's feet with great awe and reverence. I embrace one who crossed the ocean of material suffering and attain the mercy of freedom. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from the Lord's mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection of the voice of Messiah. He opens my dark eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic friend emanates, aiming to destroy the Vedic scriptures in this character. Our spiritual master is the ocean mercy, friend of the poor, Lord master of all devotees. O Master, please be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your love. Thanks for all three works we can so good. Yeah. Hare Krishna devotees, thank you very much. We have finished.